All right. Should be recording now.
Yeah, it says you're recording.
All right. So, welcome to the podcast. I just want to start out. You want to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, and kind of what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Brendan Lee, and that's my name. And basically, what I do, or what I have done, or am busy doing, is probably most notably is my connection to a man named Peter Ralston, who is like the first non-Asian ever to win like a full contact martial arts tournament in Asia. He's also a highly renowned, like enlightened teacher. And I've been studying with him since I've been like 17. So I basically found Peter when I was 17 years old. I was blown away for whatever reason and said, like, okay, I want to go study with you. And so I basically asked him, well, where are you? And he's like, okay, down in Texas. So I moved from Vermont down to Texas and I've been studying ever since. And so what that looks like is basically thousands and thousands of hours of martial training from somebody who's ridiculously intelligent, as well as thousands of hours of contemplative training as well, plus breakthroughs in enlightenment, insights into the nature of, like the human condition, stuff like that, what
Yeah.
mind is, kinds of different things. So this interesting mix of like martial and consciousness. And that's like the basics of my story. Now I live at the center here in Texas. Like I built a small place for myself and like live here, run workshops, and teach internationally and stuff like that. So
It's awesome.
great stuff.
So, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on like what kind of breakthroughs that you've had or that are possible in this type of work, or like how long did it take you doing contemplation under Peter to like start having these like insights and realizations?
Yeah. Sometimes it's tricky, like hearing a question about time, like how
Yeah.
long does something take is not necessarily quantifiable, because with certain aspects of the work, time is not an issue, or
So
to put
it's
in a, sorry, go ahead.
so it's like you don't really know when it's gonna happen. You just kind of are deliberately asking the question and with like an open mind kind of.
Yeah, I mean, so if are you asked about like the contemplation where the end result is something called enlightenment or some such? Is that the interest there? Because there are breakthroughs that can occur like in the relative domain, like that's the world we live in, is like relational. Everything is related to everything else. And then you can also have breakthroughs that are not, and now this is going to sound really friggin' weird, but like not dependent upon perception or time. You see, and then that's like
Yeah.
something that we would call the absolute, or the true nature of something. And then so you can also have a breakthrough in an insight into the true nature of something, which is not, again, perceptive or time dependent. So if you are asking me about, relative insights, sure, that could take some time. Or, maybe you put your mind and attention awareness on something and then, oh, you get it right away. And also the same goes for like contemplating the absolute nature of something. It does not matter, you contemplate to get enlightened immediately, in essence, to use the word enlighten. And I don't want to tag the word enlighten and have that be grouped up with like a whole bunch of spiritual
Yeah.
hocus pocus and bullshit that tends to happen. But just being contemplating for that, it's like I am intending to become enlightened now. And it just so happens maybe it doesn't happen right away. And then so I do that again. And so the intent, going back to your question, you're like, well, what am I doing, or what is one doing when contemplating? It is setting out to become directly conscious of the nature of whatever you're asking in this moment, and then opening up as if like not knowing what the answer is. Like an answer in this case does nothing. We're going for what we call a direct experience or direct consciousness of the matter. So you're there in essence. And so you put your attention on the subject matter with the intent to become directly conscious, and you open up. And then it's like sitting in this open space with the intent to become conscious. And then if you're doing like a contemplative technique, whatever, something will come up. And when something comes up, then you communicate that to your partner, which is in the case of a contemplation and communication exercise.
I guess. So like when I kind of started doing this work, I guess that's kind of where like I might have been mistaken, because like I always had this idea that I was trying to have this insight or whatever in the like I had this idea in the back of my mind that I'm probably gonna figure out sometime in the future. But I guess the mindset is to the correct mindset to have is that you're trying to do it right at this moment and in the present moment. So, let's see. I had a couple other ideas we could talk about. Sorry, I just drew a blank there for a second.
Yeah, that's all right. Just fire away whenever you.
So, oh yeah. It was something about openness. So, I feel like when a lot of people start doing this work, they kind of just, the reason that they have trouble going deep into this work is because of all of their previous preconceptions and ideas and beliefs about what's true and what's not true. So how do you, if people come to the center and try and learn consciousness work under you guys, how do you get them past that initial stage of them thinking they already know what's true, rather than getting them into that state of openness and not knowing what's true that leads to insight?
Yeah, it's as I'm learning myself, I very often want to come to like a quick conclusion about something, or just like jump right in and say, okay, here's the answer, or like here's the solution. And then so instead of that, I'm working more towards like people. How do you get people past that? Well, people I'm finding out, are very complex creatures in the sense that their mind is very complex, and they can be coming at the work from wherever they're coming from, and that could be many different ways or places, or like this with a twist, or what have you, with where they are at with their perspective. But to get people off of that, their preconceived notions and beliefs and assumptions, one thing that we usually do, and quite often, is we tell them to throw everything out. We literally tell them point blank, don't believe anything you've ever heard or read or think you know, and don't even believe anything that comes out of my mouth. And Peter will say, don't believe anything that comes out of my mouth either. You're not invited to a belief. You're not invited to take on what's being said as some kind of belief system or way to do things or any of that. And instead of that, you take what's being said and then you question whether it's true in your own experience. And that's usually our go-to way of handling that issue. Yet people rarely listen.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect too. So then we might address, hey, like, can you see that you're going off on a tangent that's like intellectually based, and you're just intellectualizing? And might call them out on it or work with them in certain ways. And it basically comes down to like, see if you can lighten up on all of your knowledge and just toss out all your beliefs and just basically fuck all that shit. Just get what's true, because like the truth
Yeah.
is here now. And yes, we're here to facilitate you in becoming conscious, but then then the beliefs kind of like sometimes are very tricky, so it's definitely challenging.
Yeah, so like some of the, like in this work, the it's easy for people to like get rid of their beliefs that they can easily recognize as beliefs, but it seems to me like a lot of the beliefs are kind of, they haven't been directly taught them, one like they kind of just learn them growing up, or it's like the assumptions that they hold that they kind of got by their culture or from their family when they're being raised. When like getting past those like deeply entrenched beliefs, I feel like most people don't even realize that they're beliefs in the first place. They just think that they're already true, and that a lot of the work is just realizing them as beliefs.
Yeah, that's definitely an aspect. And I hear you with what you're saying. And now I want to see right now, we're going to do a little something and see. I want to see if I can reveal the trickiness of beliefs. So, like, we just said all this stuff about beliefs, and
Yeah.
it's great because the getting past beliefs is definitely a freeing activity when I start to, it opens me up and I experience a bit of freedom. Now, you can take my word for that, but you can actually do it and you can find out. Now, however, there's a trap, if maybe not for you, but maybe for your listeners or anybody listening, if they're listening, is one could hear what's being said about beliefs and then believe that what you need to do to get enlightened is to then first you must get rid of all your beliefs and then you can get enlightened, you see.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's a belief. And it's very tricky because people will want to make a method to get as if enlightened, and it just, there is no method.
So
And then that can then live as a belief. Well, I heard from Brendan Lee that you first need to get all your beliefs gotten rid of first, and then you'll get insight. No, it doesn't work that way.
yeah, yeah. So
But the beliefs can be tricky, is what I'm trying to
yeah,
say.
so like the process is in a way very uncomfortable because you have nothing to grasp onto while contemplating. You have no like not necessarily like method, but you have like no kind of guidelines, or
It
I don't know how to
confounds the
just,
mind.
yeah, yeah, it's very like paradoxical in a way because
Yeah,
you just can't grasp grasp onto the process or the insights kind of.
yeah,
So
it's kind of like that. Can definitely be like that.
uh like does someone, like how do we create the possibility of becoming conscious? Because when I started doing this, the probably the biggest thing that I'm trying to get over is realizing that how is it even possible to become conscious of the true nature of self? Like since I've grown up, I've never even heard that as a possibility. Like it's just assumed that we are the body or the mind, but realizing that like I'm still at a point where I haven't fully created the possibility that I can become conscious of these things. So like how do you get past that first hurdle of like possibility, I guess?
Mm. Um. Well, one, you could just recognize that you, it seems to me. Here's the quick version. This is what I do during workshops, right? I look out at the people and I'm like, okay, you're here in a workshop, right? The only reason you're here in this workshop is because you already hold that it is possible. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And I try to get them with that one. And be like, all right, you settle that one down. Like, it doesn't matter. Um, well, yeah, that's true. But don't make it being a possibility a hurdle. Like I highly suspect that you personally already have that as possible. Otherwise, you wouldn't be talking to me about it, or you wouldn't really be interested in the book of not knowing or any of this stuff. So, do you hold that it is possible for you, or are you asking also for the people who are listening? Is that part of where you're coming from with the question, or is there something more I need to know?
I guess probably more for those who are listening because like I think I've gotten to a point now where I'm starting to, I think that it's possible to become conscious, but for the vast majority of the time that I was working through contemplation, I really never had that possibility. Especially when I was like reading the book of not knowing, I was just I was like questioning whether all this was possible because I just didn't think any of this was possible.
Mm,
But yeah.
mm.
So yeah, I don't know. Do you think so? I feel like we're talking a lot about like kind of like what you're trying to work towards with this practice, but how would you explain what the practice like actually is?
Oh.
So like what's kind of like the process that you go through when you sit down and you start contemplating? Is it just kind of similar to meditation, or is it more, because from what I understand, it's kind of, it's not really like intellectual. You're not trying to like think. It's not contemplation in the sense of you're thinking about something, but it's not the same as meditation either. So
Right. Okay, yeah. We can start making some distinctions here. Like one distinction that like Peter likes to make is that meditation has its roots in the word medical, if that helps. So perhaps something along the lines of healing, or definitely like meditation is like doing something with a purpose to change my state of mind. You know,
yeah,
and then contemplation is different in the sense that, and we can definitely demystify contemplation. It's not like a mysterious thing. Like for example, in history, we postulate that Isaac Newton must have contemplated gravity, or Archimedes, when the king came to Archimedes with a crown and said, I need to know if this goldsmith is screwing me by mixing copper in with the gold, figure it out. And then this guy's got a problem on his hands and he's working it, trying to figure out what's going on. Or Einstein, I'm like using scientists, but like these are people renowned for discovery. Or Immanuel Kant, who apparently got asked a question by one of his students that he couldn't answer, and then so he locked himself away for like 11 years working on this problem. And so it's like these people are contemplating, and then what's the purpose of contemplation? Like we could break it down even way down to bare bones, and it's like you just want to know something, and so you set out to become like knowledgeable on some topic. Now, not like knowledge like most people have intellectual knowledge. Like you could read a book and get all the intellectual knowledge you could. Like you can read the book of not knowing and you can get the answers. You see, oh, I want to know about enlightenment. Here's an answer. You could ask me about my true nature. I could give you an answer, but that really does nothing except give you an answer. And then so contemplation is setting out to have what you could say like a deeper understanding. So where you are the source of the knowledge, not like somebody else. It's like you're there in a sense.
yeah,
And then so it doesn't need to be a some sort of spiritual attainment or mystical thing. No, it's just wanting to know. If you have something, say, Peter talks about, he just got really curious about what he is, what the nature of reality is, and not standing on anything prior, but like really just looking into the matter deeply.
yeah. So kind of like not taking anything for granted and not like basing your ideas off anyone else's, but what you're actually experiencing, and like trying to understand without believing anything that is like hearsay or anything that someone else tells you.
Yeah. There's another aspect that I go into when I facilitate the EMB workshop, and there's an aspect of being both grounded and open. And so because I'm going back to what I think is your original or our line of query at the moment is like, well, what are you doing when you do this practice? And one aspect of it is holding the practice or trying to become conscious in a grounded yet open way. So what does that mean? Grounded is like real, solid, or grounded. Like somebody who's very close-minded is very grounded in their close-mindedness. There's no Like that's it. There's nothing else other than that. And that's like grounded to the max, you see? And so we take the groundedness like something real, not something false, but like grounded where? In your experience. So we start with like grounded yet open. You know, you don't know. It could be anything. You could be a whatever, a puff of air or a blue light, whatever, or some such, or direct conscious, whatever, something. You're open, and then like the far end of being open is like, oh, everything's possible, it's airy fairy, da 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 da, but it lacks groundedness, you see. So it's like a balance between being open yet grounded in your experience. So yeah, like where do you go? You go to the most honest and real place you possibly can right now, and that's where you start. You know, and that's, you have to be honest about that.
Yeah, definitely. So during like contemplation, do you like start out by like trying to like figuring out how to be grounded and open, or like I don't know. I remember Peter said something where along the lines of uh like when do you get to a point where you're not really focused on like grounded or openness, because you like try to be as open as possible, but sometimes I found myself like focusing too much on openness and trying to be open that I like didn't even contemplate or like ask the contemplative questions. So like I don't know where I'm going with this, but like how do you like is when you're doing personally your own contemplation, is this kind of like a thing that you train yourself where you're like not even thinking about it anymore, but you're just already have the ability to be grounded and open? Is it just like a skill, or I don't know?
You mean, are you asking like kind of how can contemplation progress over time in one's own practice or some such, or
Uh, not like not sure.
okay.
I'm saying like
Well, I could say a few things that might,
yeah, sure.
because one, we're talking about contemplation, and like this contemplation versus meditation, or contemplation as if a means to become conscious or more deeply conscious. There are, we usually share components for good contemplation, right? And the components that like the essential components are basically intent, openness, and focus. You know, you intend to become conscious of something, you're open, you have no idea what it is, and then you just stay focused on that. And you just do those, you do that. And then if you, yeah, there are, let's see. So when people go through contemplation intensives, they often have many, many challenges, right? And many different things can come up, or they'll be contemplating, but then they'll be daydreaming, or they'll be contemplating, but not realizing that they're intellectualizing. And then it's just, I think this is just stuff that people need to go through. And over time, I think one of the key factors there is real honesty with oneself. So that, because I have had times where I've been working and working and working and working, and then getting honest and honest and honest. And then at some point I go, oh, like, oh, I was trying to skip ahead to the end because I knew where I was going. And then, oh, and then I can just drop all that. But, and it's really tricky because when I'm in it, I don't know I'm doing it. Yet somehow through honesty, I can get real with myself and then go, oh, okay. Oh, here's what I'm doing. Oh, and then drop that. Or, you know, I used to contemplate and I'd have these like emotions come up, and then when then I keep having this stuff happen, and then I realize at some point, oh, I've been here like 5 times. Okay, I just won't do that again. Okay. And then so my contemplation might run into all these paths or down these directions, and then it the path running and the directions, and none of that is necessary. However, what we say was like, you gotta do what you gotta do, and you will do what you gotta do in this contemplation business. Now I'm talking about contemplation intensives where you're trying to become directly conscious of like the absolute nature of yourself or some such. The mind runs down all these paths, and then eventually you get to a place where you're just there. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing else to do because you've done it all, and you just want to know, and you're open. And then that place is very quiet.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot going on there, and there's no need to have anything going on. And then so in that direction, yeah, once you do probably a few thousand hours of contemplation, it becomes more, you like anything that you work at, you'll get better at doing. You see,
So
and it
like,
becomes more and more powerful.
yeah. So like after much practice, you have to fall into the traps to realize that they are traps. Not necessarily all of them, but like in order to realize that you're doing something wrong, you have to actually like yeah, honesty is like where you kind of get out of like transcend those traps and stuff. Would you say that like I have kind of realized I feel like some people get stuck in traps for like years at a time. Do you think like the contemplation intensive actually like being with other people and realizing and kind of being in that setting, does that help you kind of get past those traps or maybe realize them more effectively?
Sure, in a huge way. And I'll tell you why. Basically, when you're on your own, you have life to deal with. When you're in a contemplation intensive, at least the ones we do here, everything is taken care of for you. So you have one job, and that is to contemplate. And we tell you like when to get up, when to go to bed, when to eat, when to set up. You don't need your phone. We will keep time. And that really makes a difference. Plus, you have a skilled facilitator in the room who knows what they're doing, and a lot of other people that are all together in the same environment doing the same thing, and it builds up a lot of pressure. And that's part of its how it works. They call it like the build up and breakthrough method, where you build up this as if pressure, and it pushes. There's no mechanical way to describe it, but basically you build up the pressure, and then you're in a better place now, and it doesn't matter yet. You're in a better place to have some kind of breakthrough. And that definitely helps because you'll move through a lot of stuff a lot faster than you would if you were on your own, where, like you said, people can get caught up, or they have nobody else there to point at things, or they hear, it just doesn't, people can get very insulated in their own world and just get lost in that, like you said, for years. And I'm sure that's possible.
Like especially when a lot of people, including myself, I just like if I'm just contemplating on my own, I'll just like 20 minutes will go by and I realize, oh, I was just lost in thought the entire time because like I'm just sitting by myself and it's just so easy to just like be lost in thought and just daydreaming rather than actually contemplating.
Yeah.
So you talked about like it's really powerful to be in like that setting with like so many other people uh because like personally I don't how would you like you can never get like the probably as deep or like as effective maybe as like a retreat, but is there like certain ways that you could like if you're by yourself that you could kind of not necessarily like recreate that but like in a sense be more effective? Because I don't know what I'm kind of getting at how like personally I've had trouble like keeping a steady habit because I feel like my like everyone around me, no one else is doing the same work, and I don't really have very much like support by like my peers or whatever. So like how would you like sustain and be more effective in like your practice rather than like falling into the traps of your those around you?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is sort of I think of the way I am in relationship to people. So maybe at a young age in high school, even I was kind of like, well, fuck all you guys. I don't give a shit what you think. I'm interested in something, so I go do it. So it maybe takes a certain amount of audacity. Peter definitely is an audacious motherfucker, like seriously audacious person. That, and I think it's useful to not, as if, listen to that stuff. Now, I think some people actually don't have that stuff going on. Like they're not concerned about the concerns of others. Uh, some of us are concerned about what other people think, and that's just the way it goes. And then, if you want to make your practice powerful or your contemplation powerful, it's like you just got to know that that's on you to do that, no matter what anybody says or thinks. And so, how do you do that? Well, I don't know. You could ask yourself a question like, well, okay, how powerfully do I want to be with this? Do I want to be lightweight or do I want to kick some ass? Do I want to really go deep in this or not? And if you do, then go ahead and do that. And there's no, yeah, but yeah, and there's nobody and it is hard. I can totally empathize with the challenge of feeling like, okay, there's nobody around me that really gets what I'm doing, nor do they give a shit. They're worried about getting their thank TGIF. I did my 9 to 5, my 40 hours. Thank God it's Friday. I'm gonna go drink now, or get laid, or go buy the next coolest thing in the store, and or pause babies and they're dealing with family and just whatever. And that is their priority. Doesn't need to be my priority. Or maybe I could have that as a priority, but I don't have to listen to that or do that. So it's it comes down to personal choice, really. And then the real hard part is you are the only person that can make that choice for yourself. Nobody can do it for you, and that's the truth. So
Definitely, yeah.
definitely a challenge. I hear you.
So just realizing that like on the deepest level, like you can't just like, I don't know, I really agree, or like I find it really powerful to just, if you do this long enough, you kind of just get to this point where like you stop caring what people think and trying to like fit in on the social level. And doesn't mean you can't participate in those activities, but just on a deep level you just aren't invested as much into it, with like your sense of self isn't invested into those pursuits as much, I guess. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
I think there's like another aspect too, at least for myself, and fairly recently in my life, is seeing because I'm a chatty guy, and me and the social thing, we're good to go. Like I can
Yeah.
talk to pretty much anybody all the time. Don't care where you're from, and somehow you'll end up liking me at the end of it or some such. That's just what it looks like to me. Um, so I'm very kind of wed to this social world. And more, and maybe of late, I'm starting to realize certain, it's almost like there are consequences to things. Now, if where I'm coming from with being social isn't maybe as powerful as I could be, I start to recognize, oh, these certain aspects are actually damaging, even though it's what I'm seeking for my own pleasure. They don't give me any sort of long-term fulfillment, and then I'm starting to make these connections. Whereas, and I feel like I'm very late in making these connections, where it's like, oh, I see that if I work hard doing something, staying disciplined, and I'm not saying I'm very disciplined, by the way, that if I work hard at something over a sustained period of time and don't get fulfilled in the short term, and I don't get any sort of short term pleasure, that there's a more long-term fulfillment that is possible, but only possible if I stick with something. And then, so for example, starting to notice that, and then noticing, okay, when I'm out socializing, is that giving me any sort of long-term fulfillment? No. So I'm like inclined as if naturally to avoid that just for my own well-being. Now, I'm not saying that that's a prescription of how to live your life. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that perhaps there are other things to be aware of that will offer different results, whereas then it would be more natural for you not to care about what other people think.
Yeah.
Because you could ask yourself, well, what's the cost? What's it costing me to care about what other people think? What do I get from it? And then if you can really dig into what you get from it versus what it's costing you, you might say, wait a minute, this is costing me a lot more than what I'm getting from it. So why am I doing that? And then dropping it becomes a little more available and perhaps empowering other things that you say you want to be doing, like contemplation or consciousness or some such.
That's great. I never really thought about it that way. I kind of just like took it for granted, but I feel like it'd be much more powerful to actually just like look at it and like, rather than staying distracted all the time, just sit down and actually look at it from like a objective point of view. Like, what is this actually, like, why, like asking why more often. Why am I doing this, or why do I care so much?
Yeah,
And
or
yeah,
and then also get what the why question can be a challenge in the sense it might send you down a psychological road or some such. It's even more empowering, I believe, to ask what it is. So like I'm distracted, say, or I'm fantasizing, which I did my first contemplation intensive, by the way. I fantasized for an entire week. I've never experienced that much pain my entire life. So that's what I'm like, nope, no thanks. No more of that stuff. Don't need to do that. The whole week of that, I'm done. I'm good. Good. That hurt like hell. That's just an aside.
that's great.
Yeah, don't. It was brownies, motorcycles, and women for an entire week. That's the worst. I wanted to be anywhere but where I was, and that was so painful. See, so you're fantasizing, you're distracted. What's going on there? You could say, maybe phrase it like that, like, what am I doing? What am I doing with this fantasizing? What am I doing by being distracted? Like, what is it? What's going on here such that I'm distracted? Likely some kind of avoidance of some such, because you're not, the purpose of the distraction is so that you're focusing somewhere, and this feels better than focusing here, for example, or in the present. But you can ask, like, what is it? What's it doing? And you'll start to uncover, oh, what am I doing here? And then maybe you decide or notice the costs, the benefits.
Yeah. In that, like, by its very like nature, that process of just asking, that's becoming conscious in and of itself, right? Because like, rather than living unconsciously and like just going through your day, not like, when you're asking these questions, you're starting to like understand like your actions and like the causes of your actions to a greater degree. So I guess you might have already answered this question, but I was going to ask about, like, how long do you contemplate, and do you think it's like important for to do like really long, or like not necessarily long, but like focused sits for like days at a time, or not days at a time, but just like where you do like an hour, take a break, another hour, rather than like, especially with like meditation, I also find this with contemplation, is that if I only do it for like 20 or 30 minutes a day, if I'm not like mindful or like acting, like thinking about my actions, or not necessarily thinking about my actions, but like if my daily life isn't an extension of my practice, it kind of like counteracts my practice, and then I don't get any results from it. Then the next day I'm just as distracted as I was the day before. So, like, how do you make sure that you're actually progressing and that you're not just not going anywhere because during your day you're just like falling into bad habits and not like being mindful, I guess.
Hmm. What when you say being so when you're talking, I'm getting a sense of maybe that you have something for yourself that's like an ideal or a belief that you should be mindful or you should be a conscious person, and that there's already a preset image of what that looks like. Is that true for you?
Um, yeah, I guess that would be true.
Okay, I
I
mean,
feel
if it's true,
I
it's true. You know, I'm just curious because I thought I heard some of that in what you were saying, and I wanted to clear that up a little bit before responding.
yeah, I guess I have kind of had that ideal that I should be like that I should be like mindful and I should be not falling into like any of these bad habits because I'm present and stuff, and I feel like I shouldn't be anytime I do something that's like distracting or something. I think that that's not good and that I should be like mindful instead. I don't know.
Okay. Do you, when you say bad habits, what do you mean?
Like
Oh, could you give
checking
an
my
example?
phone all the time, watching TV, eating junk food, any of that kind of stuff.
Right, right. And then I'm assuming you do these bad habits.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. So, all right, cool, cool. Yeah. So one of the things that I've noticed, so we're shifting gears now. I'm going to talk, this is like probably about personal transformation or like changing the person that you are, right? Or say you have some shitty things you do, you want to stop doing the shitty things, but you keep doing the shitty things, and so you don't know, you want like help with that or some such. Um One of the things that I tell people right away, if you want to do like some sort of personal transformation, is to love exactly what you're doing. And then people go like, "Well, I can't love what I'm doing." I'm like, "Yes, you can." "No, but I can't. I don't like it." Blah blah blah. Like, okay, well, just be open to that. Maybe if you fully accept, you cannot become conscious of anything that you don't know what's there. Now, if there are aspects of yourself that you don't like and you're like, nah, I don't like that, and you resist that aspect, it's like hiding it from yourself. It might be over here, but you go to look for it and you don't, no, there's nothing to see here. You see, it's like, this is the bad part. So then I say, like, okay, I need you to fully accept everything. When you fully start to accept everything, you start to go, oh, here's what's happening. Oh, now I can see what I'm doing. And then you can be conscious of what it is. See, like, consciousness is not about changing anything. People always think that becoming conscious is about changing and transforming or getting better. No, 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 no. It doesn't do that. It just is conscious. So it's just getting what is. You know, people want to get enlightened because they want to be happy or they want to get over some sort of issue they have going on. It's like, no, that's not his purpose either. It doesn't matter. It's just what's true now.
Becoming
And
aware of what's already there.
like that, or becoming conscious of what awareness is.
Yeah.
See, and then that can go, the mind, what, wait a minute, we can't do that. Like, yeah, I know, but consciousness can do that. And that's one of the fascinating things. So it's, so that's another as if trap. And for, say, for your own self, you know, you're talking about these bad habits, you know, don't, so I would recommend, you see, now this is a recommendation, who cares, you know, could do it, not do it, that's fine. um you know, take a look at what you are doing. Yeah, you're eating junk food. Okay, what am I doing eating junk food? And then you beat yourself up about eating the junk food. So you eat the junk food, and then you make yourself in pain about it, probably. And then, I rag on people a little bit. I go like, well, don't treat my friends like that. You don't get to treat you like that. Nobody treats my friends that way. Like, because I used to beat myself up. Okay, I still beat myself up a lot. But it's like, what is that doing? It's just adding pain on top of pain. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
So if you want to become conscious, get what you are doing. Don't try to change anything. Don't worry about that. And then I say, like, love, aka accept what's going on fully. And then you can really get a clear picture of what's there. And then likely that alone is a change. And it doesn't
Yeah.
really take any time, that kind of thing. So there's some stuff there.
So like during your day, say you accept what's there, and then are there ways that you kind of are like asking questions or maybe contemplating throughout the day about your actions, or not necessarily, or like are there ways that you kind of you're able to understand what's already there because you're just like contemplating throughout the day, I guess?
You mean for me personally?
Uh yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
Or
I
I
think
guess what sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, there I think there I'm sensing there was a question you were asking me about, is it better to like contemplate do long periods or short periods? One of the things that Peter will often say, because people will ask pretty much every time we do a contemplation intensive or workshop, they'll be talking to Peter at the end and they'll ask him like, well, what do you recommend that I do for a daily practice? And then Peter will tell them like the main thing is don't, if you say you're going to do 2 hours a day, then do 2 hours a day. But if you know that you're going to say you're going to do 2 hours a day and you're not going to fulfill that, then don't give your word to yourself. You don't have to give your word to yourself, but if you do, keep your word is the main thing. So like and he'll get down, okay, 15 minutes a day. You can't handle 15 minutes a day, then do 5. If you can't do 5, then do 1. Put it so low that you would be embarrassed if you didn't do it. And then what you do with that is you do, okay, I'm going to do 1 minute a day. You do it, and you're going to start to build up a track record of like integrity, of personal integrity, which has a lot to do with your own personal power, but that's another story. Then you're doing something daily, and it seems to build up a positive track record with yourself. And also what Peter will say is if you do like even a minute a day, it might change your relationship to the day. And maybe at some other point during the day, you'll remember, oh, to contemplate or to question or to work on something. And that seems to be useful in terms of steady, long-term progress where you're building little bits at a time, but you're doing it steadily. That seems to be better than like a short burst of concentrated effort. Now, I would highly recommend doing short bursts of concentrated effort, but definitely have something steady, for like the layman out there or somebody who just wants to have something, do something small but steady seems to
But
be best.
to make sure that if you're doing those short bursts of concentrated effort, that those aren't making like those aren't burning you out in a sense that you don't keep your daily practice going, but it just adds on to your daily practice maybe.
Yeah, it seems
So
it seems that way. That seems like a more powerful way to go about it.
yeah. So like I know in the past I've gotten really into like mindfulness meditation and trying to like be present during the day as much as possible. Is there kind of a corollary to that with contemplation where you're like I've I've maybe dabbled into this a little bit where I'm going throughout my day and maybe I get distracted and then I ask myself, well, who's thinking that thought or who's aware of that to maybe continue my contemplation throughout the day rather than just contemplating during the time that I'm sitting down deliberately to contemplate. So like, how do you approach, I don't know, like contemplating or furthering your contemplation practice like throughout the day, in daily life, in monotonous or whatever you're doing throughout the day? Do you like ask these types of questions throughout the day, or I don't know?
Yeah. See, I don't. Truth be told, I don't have a regular practice that I do. But I also, well, I mean, I live at a center. I'm serious enough to have moved from Vermont to Texas. I built a house for myself behind the center. I'm very immersed in the work, and sharing the work, and then doing videos and other stuff. So I do find times during the day, where I will sit, I will contemplate, but it's not like I have a blocked out time. That's just me personally. Um, but do I contemplate daily? It seems that way. I'll go, and then at some point, something, I'll be like, okay, I'll start working again. Just as like a natural thing that I do. Um, but to what comes up for me to say, like for people, if there's a question out there, and I'm sensing maybe there's a question along these lines, for people like, well, how do I get serious, or how do I boost the power of my contemplation? And the answer is like, just fucking do it.
Yeah.
All right, so just like get off your ass, or get on your ass, as the case may be, and you really, basically, I think probably the main component is you just really want to know something. And if you're really curious and really want to know something, you'll want to know. And maybe there's a way to become fascinated with what the truth is, or fascinated with, like, okay, well, or really getting, you don't know who you are or what you are, and then you go, well, wait a minute, if I don't know who I am, shouldn't I know that, or don't I want to know that? And then it might just arise, and then your contemplation will likely be greatly empowered from that aspect, like really just wanting to know something. In terms of being more powerful in meditative practices, it's like, so like drawing from the martial world, where Peter has done a lot of work with me, and I've done a lot of work with him. And one of the things he'll always tell me, he's told me thousands of times, Brendan, control your mind. Control your mind, Brendan. So like, in order to be powerful in martial arts, the mind needs to be under control. It's the mind is the powerful thing there, not so much the body. Yes, the body, but that's like 10% of the equation. The other 90%, it's all mind, like creating the right type of state, having the right kind of awareness, all this stuff, which is very beneficial and demonstrably beneficial in martial arts. Control your mind. And what mind control actually is more about what you don't think than about what you do think. So in the case of probably meditation, if the mind is distracted, it's like, oh, here I go to distraction. No, thanks. No, stay, and just stay with that. And that will empower likely your meditation, because whatever your meditation is, like, focus on this, usually focus here, focus there. That's what I think it is usually, is like some form of consider reality like this, or feel your stomach, or sense your breathing, or notice your thoughts. And then, so if you're noticing your thoughts and you get caught up in your thoughts, you go, nope, I'm just going to notice my thoughts. And you take your mind, you go, stay. So it stays with the process instead of running around like a petulant child or something.
Yeah. So you want to elaborate a little bit more on uh I was curious about like martial arts and or the uh physical aspect of it, and like how does that relate to like consciousness work? Because when I like first saw it, I was just thinking about I only want to do contemplation. I only just want to get to the real contemplative work. But
Saw,
I'm
when you
like
said saw
sensing that
it, do you mean like the books or
I'm
Peter?
sensing like uh like basically why is like the body being and like the martial arts style, why is that important just as much as the actual sitting down and contemplating?
It's not.
All right.
Yeah, yeah. There's a thing. I'm assuming because way back you said like when I saw it. Do you mean like the work of Peter Ralston or the books or something like that? You said the first time I saw it. What's the it you're talking about?
Probably, I think I was talking about like the first time I saw like the contemplative work or like in the book of not knowing.
Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. People often want to draw a connection between martial arts and consciousness. They're not connected. The only way they get connected is if we go, martial arts and consciousness, and then we squash them together, and then we say they're connected. That's the only way that happens. Like Peter, Peter will go off sometimes about like he's like, man, these people like they like take Tai Chi and the I Ching and they just try to fucking squeeze them together, and it just what are you doing? You're like trying to fit the Tai Chi moves in with the enneagrams or whatever, and it just and he goes off about that, and I can see it as well from my own perspective. It's like, yeah, no. Consciousness has nothing to do with martial arts. It just doesn't. They're totally separate activities, right? However, there does seem, and this isn't like drawing a connection, but yet like the consciousness or questioning, like deeply questioning reality or getting really good at questioning has benefits on its own in terms of like one's ability to learn and discover new things. You see, and that can definitely be applied to martial arts or any art form or any activity really, in order to gain a depth of understanding that other people don't have. So like are they related? No. Is there some benefit to doing the consciousness work when doing martial arts? Sure, because I'm doing a bunch of consciousness. I am becoming more deeply aware of what my own mind does, how it works. And what am I using when I'm doing martial? Of course, mind is a huge component. So understanding mind could make a difference. Also, the body being work, like when Peter, it's like consciousness applied to the body. You see, it's not that they're connected. There's no connection, yet the same rigor and the depth of questioning about, say, the nature of reality also includes the body. So then we look and we start questioning, okay, what is the body? How does it function? How is it built? You know, what are its parameters? You see the fingers bend this way. They don't bend that way. Huh. Oh, the body's resting on the ground. Oh, gravity. We have to contend with that. Okay, yeah. What's the relationship there? You see, so using the questioning to greatly, understand better what's occurring can have an influence on one's ability or understanding. Yet they are not a related activity unless we relate them. But there's no inherent relationship between consciousness and really anything else, unless we create that relationship. But people always often they have a fantasy about, and I had this too, so I can totally understand from my own perspective, is like when I first saw or heard of Peter, I'm like, oh my God, he's like an enlightened martial arts master, like the fucking stories, the guru on the mountain, like he's the one, you know? So I took my
Yeah.
18-year-old ass down to like see the real deal. Because he also, when he talks, it's like, this is real. This isn't just some hocus pocus crap that I'm sure that comes across in the writing. There's like a level of authenticity that is presented there that I don't think I've never seen anywhere else. Like it's the real deal. And then so people get that it's the real deal, and then but they still have the fantasy of the enlightened martial arts master and then go, oh, that's the real thing. And then later on I discovered no, there's no connection.
So what I'm getting at is I'm like starting to realize that what you basically just talked about can relate to like so many other things where we like try to make connections and like we add this layer of like superficiality onto like our experience and onto all these different topics, especially in the like intellectual field that but in reality we should just be like seeing we don't a lot of times we don't see things for what they actually are but for what our mind wants them to be, I guess. So um that was about it. um a lot of time, so had this one other question. So like when I've been like contemplating and stuff, I've found that I go much deeper, or I'm just much more effective when I kind of realize the labels that I'm putting on to things within my contemplation practice. So like I bet you've heard of Rupert Spira, right? So like in one of his books he really talks about like if we want to realize, get down to our own direct experience, especially like he gave this activity or this example where if you're thinking about you're listening to all the sounds in your environment, most of the time when we're listening to them we're labeling them for what that sound is rather than actually hearing the sound. And I guess um I don't really know where I'm going with that, but like how can you approach like seeing something without all the labels that we put onto it? And yeah.
Yeah, I got answers for you.
Awesome.
What you something we do in say workshops, you can do this quite readily actually. It's we call it completion, or then and then using, it's called completion, so being able to complete something, and then we're using a principle called like seeing things what we call for itself. Now what is that basically? So like for example, you see if I do some sort of symbol, like yeah, like you know what that is, right
Yeah.
away, you know, okay, that's a thumbs up, it has meaning to you, there's probably some charge, like positive charge or whatever. And then so using for itself, you look at that, you see that, but you take away the meaning, you take away that it means thumbs up. It doesn't mean you have to destroy all that, you just see what's here. You have your emotional relationship to it, what it means to you, that it's a thumb. You see, you take away all the concepts from the sight perception till you're just left with the raw perception of that. You basically, and essentially, just stop knowing what it is. Can you do that?
Yeah.
Like it's just, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't even have, it's not a thumb and fingers. It's not a hand. It's just that. I mean, you can do that with stuff in your room, like you have a microphone, spit pad, or a
Yeah.
air blockage thing. You see, you take away the title, you take away what it means to you, whether you like it or dislike it, and you're just left with that. And likely, if you can do that, which is quite easy to do, like we get people to do it all the time, you will probably be a little more curious or start to notice more what it is, because you're taking away all the stuff that is not.
Yeah. Yeah.
and and so perhaps, I don't know what Rupert Spear is talking about, but perhaps it's something along those lines where if you hear a bird song, you go, oh, that's a bird, and then usually put it to bed. Okay, that I know what that is, that's a bird. Or I know what it is, it's a bird, and I don't know what that bird is, and that's it. And then you can just let go of the sound. Whereas if you take away, wait a minute, I don't know if that's a bird, could be a recording, who knows, and you just hang with, you take that away, now you're left with more of an alive event that occurs that you don't know what it is, but you're really listening to what's there without your preconceived notions about what it is, just blocking as if what's there, where you
Yeah.
like know it. You're taking away that, and then you get real curious. Wow, there's a
I
thing.
think, yeah, what he was kind of talking about was like when we kind of put all these labels on things, that's what creates like this sense of like separateness when we like label ourselves like, oh, that's my body, or especially like when my eyes are like I'm contemplating, my eyes are closed. I if I hear something say like my family talking because I live in the same house as them, or like traffic passing by, I'll label that as soon as I label it, it'll make it seem like further away from me, or like it creates that sense of separateness, like I am here, that is there, and it really just creates that conceptualization in my mind that what it is, like I already know what it is, and it's separate from my awareness of it. But I guess that's kind of I've gone the deepest into my contemplation practice when I've actually worked and tried very hard to actually get rid of those labels and to see it just as raw, direct, like awareness and experience rather than the idea that I have of what it is or what it should be. And it's been like very helpful within my practice. But then as soon as I open my eyes, I have a much harder time seeing like the objects as labels just because they seem so like distinct from my body or whatever. So I'm not sure why that is, but I guess what you were talking about, you were kind of giving that example or that practice of looking at something, taking away the meaning from it and seeing it for what it really is. So I think that's like a very practical thing to do.
Sure. Yeah, it could be practical. And then I think a couple things came up for me. Like one, don't make it a method. Like first I need to do the completion and then I can become conscious. You could become conscious in the middle of feeling totally separated and labeling everything.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. And something else came out. I can't remember. Taking things away. You can also get real present, like before, like if you look around your room, can you see how you live in a like you know what everything is already? You know,
Yeah.
you are in a room with a microphone and the headphones, and you know what it means. You know how to work it, and then if you can, this is just maybe for fun. You can soak in that this is all known. It is already all known to you, which means it's the same as saying it is actually confessing that you don't know what it is, because the known is like when you make something known, you decide that's what it is and it's fixed. And if you can kind of see or maybe sense as if the activity of making everything known, you can get that you really don't know what anything is because you are making it known.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you like you are giving the, like I see a fan but is behind your head, or I have like these little hand things for my grips behind my head. It's like I know what those are, and because I'm doing the knowing, that means that isn't what's there because it's something I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so then I
Definitely.
really don't know what anything is, and you can kind of soak in that, and it can be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess that's about it. Nothing really came up, I think. Uh that's pretty much the entire interview. I don't know, maybe we could end with like what books would you like kind of recommend? Like which to get more deeply into this work, like maybe like some of Peter's books or whatever. Which ones have you found like most? I guess they're all practical and useful, but which ones have been your favorite, I guess?
Books? Yeah. Well, in terms is you that's a good thing. Maybe I don't know, maybe it's better. So if you ask me the question from the standpoint of like how could I best serve the people, yourself, or anybody who's listening that has an interest in consciousness work, I would have to say is probably, you know, yes, read the book probably for consciousness, the Book of Not Knowing, bar none. There you go. That's the one to read. And then more than just read it, like take it on for yourself. And what does that look like? That looks like getting real honest. Probably is like one of the main aspects, and just get real with yourself and start questioning what's going on. What is happening? Not like, why is this happening? Like looking for some sort of meaning in the universe, because we could make meaning up the wazoo. That's easy to do. We create shitloads of meaning, but it'd be more like get what meaning is. Get what stuff is, like deeply question, and then throw out everything that you've ever heard. Like don't worry, you're not going to lose your knowledge somewhere. Your knowledge isn't going to go anywhere. You can throw it out, but then pick it up later. I don't give a shit what you do with it. But don't let it stand in your way of actually becoming conscious. And then, because that's the most powerful thing, I think. When I started this work, I didn't read Peter's books. I was just referred to him by a teacher. And I said, holy shit, I want to go do what you're doing. Where are you? In Texas. Okay, I'll be there. Before Book of Not Knowing was even available, I just did it. Before Peter did the writing of the books, he was questioning. He was making breakthroughs. So it's like there's the quote, seek not to follow in the footsteps of the masters of old. You seek what they sought. So you use the books to go seeking your own consciousness so that you can be conscious. That is what will make a difference. Reading a bunch of books, great thing to do, intellectually stimulating, but it doesn't really matter in a sense of like actually becoming deeply conscious. You use the books like a stepping stone, but then you need to jump into what's true for yourself. And that's the hard thing. That's the hard thing to do. Yeah, that's what I would say.
So I guess rather, instead of what books to read, it should be like, the better question might be what steps to take now that you have this now that you like listen to this podcast. What steps would you take after this? What, maybe just being more honest and starting to question what things are within your life. Question to understand rather than to create new beliefs, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Like I'm getting a sense of like an approach, so it's not about the content that you hear. It's about how you're going to approach your life, and do you want to become conscious of what's going on for you? Do you want to become conscious of reality for you? Because nobody can do it for you. And that is the gut. That's the fucking truth. That's the pill to swallow, and get real honest. So it's not like I'm talking about a level of honesty that just wipes everything out. That not as in like you should live a certain way or shouldn't live a certain way, but it just cuts right to the core of what's going on. So then you see what's going on for yourself, and that's where it's at. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you are left with your own experience. You have zero choice in that matter. You don't have my experience. You have yours. And so if you want to become conscious, it's like that's the experience where you need to do the work and nowhere else, because it doesn't happen anywhere else. And that'd be my invitation.
Yeah. It's awesome. Thank you very much for this interview.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
Really, it definitely made me think. In a lot of times with previous interviews, I kind of gone through it. I've had the question. I've kind of had an idea what they might say. In this one, I feel like it's so much more powerful because I'd ask a question and then I would not expect I would not be able to predict anything that you're like about to say, but it gets you thinking more, you know?
Great.
Yeah.
Great.